Oh, hello, my unraveled friends. We need to talk. Yep, she did that. The girl got on the stand. Look, I gotta be honest with you. I was hearing all the analysts saying, no, 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 we don't think so. But in my brain, I was just like, well, then what else are they gonna do? Like, where else are they gonna go with this? Unless they just rested and was like, well, you didn't really prove it, so we're gonna let you guys have that. And you didn't do your job, and it's not our job to prove it. It's your job to prove it. And that's that. Like, I mean, that was their only other option. The gasp I gusped when I was at work and finally had a chance to sneak away and turn on the trial, which was about an hour into its start. And as soon as I clicked on the live stream and I saw her sitting there, and I had to turn it off because I was like, no, I need my I have to be locked in. This needs my full attention. So between my lunch hour and the ride home, or the walk home, I work like across the street. The walk home and just kind of catching up on the last bit when I arrived home on 1.5 speed, I caught up and I jumped right on. We got to talk about it. We have to talk about Iowa versus Karina Cooper being charged with the first degree murder of her husband, Ryan Cooper, in cahoots with her much younger lover, now 26-year-old Houston Denker. And I don't really know what her testimony did for me, but we're going to talk about it real quick. We are. So there we are. Excuse the scrubs, excuse the work gear. I try to like switch from one to the other when I record, but I couldn't wait. I just had to. I'm like, well, somebody has to talk about this with me. Somebody has to. I have to know what you guys think at this point. This is it. Trial's over. Trial's over after this. Spoiler alert. Let's go through this. Karina's on the stand. I swear. Okay. So it's her lawyer asking her questions. How was the nature of your relationship? Totally good. Totally normal. Right? We met in the summer of 2006. We were married in September of 2009. We have 3 children together. They go into like all of their hobbies and all of their what they call toys, like the snowmobiles and the ATVs and all of the things that we knew that like Ryan was into. I guess Karina was kind of into that too. Started talking about all the future plans that they had. Yeah, we wanted to build these new buildings. We wanted to build the new shop. We wanted to, all of this stuff, right? Basically laying this foundation for like, why would I do this? Like we had plans. We were building a life. They get into Ryan's work schedule and it was, yeah, he worked long hours year round. He drove semis for the farm. We had crops, we had cattle, all of that stuff. Then they get into the sleeping, like where Ryan would sleep. And it was, yes, he slept in the recliner. He snored a lot. He would sleep hard when he was asleep, but he was up and down a lot throughout the night. So, just kind of like that general stuff, laying this foundation of just like, there's nothing inherently abnormal about our marriage or our lives together. Then they get into the truck that Karina sold. They start saying, because I know one of Karina's questions to Michelle was how much was owed on the truck, and she was like less than 15 grand. So they start talking about the truck to clarify that the reason it had gotten paid down so quickly was because he had another truck before. It was in some sort of accident on the farm. Insurance gave them money for that truck, and he used that money to pay down most of the new truck, which he bought identical to the first one. Okay, cool. Bottom line is the debt on the truck at the time of Ryan's death was down below $15,000. They start talking about like what Ryan owned, what his assets were, all of these things. Karina said that he was actually an hourly employee of Cooper Farms, right? His family's farm, but that him and his brother Aaron had basically bought out. They were making payments to the corporation, the Cooper Farms Corporation, towards purchasing 200 acres of land that they would farm as well. And that's kind of where a lot of her and Ryan's income came from. And then she made this comment about how Ryan was the one in charge of all the finances. And she said, yeah, he just knew I was no good at that. Well, we know, girl. We had the overdraft discussion. Speaking of overdraft discussion, that was the very next thing that was brought up. By the way, I'm not throwing shade at anyone whose bank account gets overdrafted because it happens. I get that. But it seemed to be used by prosecution as a way to just kind of prove that Karina liked to live beyond their means by spending more money than what she had coming in. But seriously, if your bank account is in the negative right now, no shade to you. I get it. Single mom, it happens. Okay, so no shade there, Karina. I feel you. I get it. But it happened a lot. It happened a lot, a lot. And like I said, speaking of that discussion, that was the next thing that got brought up by defense. And Karina basically just kind of said that this was what she said, not my words, hers, laziness and forgetfulness, like knowing she had spent money, but just being at the house and like not feeling like or not remembering to take a deposit down to the bank from like her barber shop, etc. Anyway, more talk about finances, and defense asked about credit cards. She was like, well, he had a credit card that we kind of like shared, I guess. And I had a couple of store cards like Target, Macy's, etc. Those kinds of things. They start talking about Karina's relationship with Ryan's siblings, more specifically Aaron and Michelle. And of course, Karina said that, they were all close in general. They would see each other when they could. They would do birthdays, barbecues, holidays, all of the things, that family members do. There was no animosity from anyone in the family. Then we get into life insurance, and defense is asking Karina just about, okay, so where'd the money go? And Karina was like, okay, I paid down debt, some stuff for the farm, some like wood and stuff that we were using to build these new buildings that, we were working on. I did sell his vehicle and my vehicle, and I got another vehicle. I paid down some credit card debt. I did open 2 storefronts. One was a barber shop, and that only lasted a couple of months, she said. She said she kept having a lot of trouble with people coming in and really only coming into the shop to ask questions and find out what happened. I get that. That's probably shitty. Sorry to curse. I don't know my audience base just yet, but I apologize for the foul language. But that's what it is. It's crappy. It sucks. And I can imagine that would add a lot of stress to anyone's life, whether they were guilty or not guilty. Just people probing and asking questions would add a lot of anxiety in your everyday life. And so she said, forget that. I'm not doing that anymore. And so she had a friend who had a shop, and I guess she kind of rented a space, like a booth per se, from this friend's shop where she would sell like her soaps and her shampoos and her little knickknacks. She would make like live, laugh, love signs, those kinds of things. She would do that. But again, I think the friend was moving shops, but she was moving to a smaller space. There wasn't a lot of space. Karina said she just kind of let that go. And then there was actually one more. So at first, when I can't remember who was testifying about, maybe it was Michelle, about her opening these shops. I thought that she said she took that merchandise and decided to work from home, but it was actually embroidery. And so she used $12,000 of the life insurance money to buy an embroidery machine. She bought that, started that business from home. Unsure how successful that one was. I don't remember if they got into that one too much. Anyway, they talked about her living arrangements. She said they lost the house when Ryan passed away. And so her and the kids kind of bounced around, rented property from a friend, rented property in town in Traer, but ultimately ended up back on one of the properties that was owned by Cooper Farms. So then defense does this thing where they bring up a statement from a company called Envision Wealth Portfolios. And this was a current, like to date, I don't know to date, but maybe like April or May of this year, like a recent statement of that portfolio. And it does show over $371,000 in this portfolio. And I was kind of like, okay. I mean, and defense asked their client, Karina Cooper, like, what is this? She's like, it's most of the insurance money. I put it in, it's being invested right now. And it had like some stuff, and they were like, what are those? And she's like, I don't know. I just kind of am trusting like my financial advisor. And that is a trust, or what it is, what she started it as a fund, an investment fund that once Ryan's estate was completely settled would turn into trusts for the children. Okay. So, I mean, that's one tally in the Karina column. She didn't just like blow through all this money and go crazy, like just buying like, designer bags and, whatever else. Like she invested this money, which is still in this account to this day. Okay. Okay. So then defense starts asking Karina about the children's sleeping arrangements. And she does mention, she said, yeah, I was bribing them that summer, for lack of a better word. I told them they could do whatever they wanted with their rooms because they never slept in their own rooms. They were always in the room with me, or the oldest boy was always in the living room with Ryan. And she said, I really just wanted them to start sleeping in their own rooms. And so I told them that I would paint their room, decorate the rooms, whatever they want that summer to get them that by the next school year, all the children were in their own rooms. Okay. And then defense does this thing where they bring up a picture of Karina with her children, and they show it to her, and she gets weepy and emotional, and they admit that as evidence. Look, the line of questioning that follows the admission of that photo of Karina and her 3 children, which they showed, by the way, and I was appalled at the fact that they literally showed. I don't know if there was just kind of like oh, we didn't see that coming by media, but it was there. I don't like that. Leave the kids out of this. Don't show the photos of the kids. But they did. They showed the photo of Karina and her kids. And of course, she just starts weeping. And defense, of course, is just like, didn't you love your children? And she was like, yes. I mean, and, sad and crying. Listen, there's no doubt in my mind that Karina Cooper loved her children. I've never once throughout this entire thing that has just consumed my life and my mind for 2 weeks, never once did a thought even cross my mind that like she was a terrible mom, she hated her kids. I never thought that. There was never any question about that. But girl, that's not what is in question here. Where nobody here is questioning the fact that you loved your children. Your mother, most mothers adore and would die for their kids. That's not what we're talking about here. I guess I get it as a defense like tactic to like elicit some sort of emotion from Karina, and then therefore maybe an emotional response from the jury, like to connect with her on some level. Are there how many women, how many men? I don't know. I probably could have found out, but it doesn't matter. I feel like, you know what I'm saying? Because it wasn't relevant. Nobody, not once, not anywhere that I have seen, has said that Karina was a bad mom or didn't love her kids. I haven't even seen that being raised as a question. Oh, I do want to clarify that. I don't think that's ever been anything that anybody has accused Karina of from the start of this until now. Not that I've seen and not that I know. And so for them to kind of do that, I was just kind of like, we know she loves her kid. Like, that's not what we're talking about. Of course she loves her kids, right? Anyway, I think the emotional response was what the point of that was, right? Pull on the heartstrings of the jury a little bit and see if that helps. Then we start talking about the fact that some friends, she starts saying like, you guys have a really large friend group. She's like, yeah, really large and really diverse. Like certain people we do certain things with, certain people I do things with without him, and he does things without me. Like it's a very diverse couples that we do things with together. And then I have other friends and he has other, I don't even know that many people. I don't even know. Like, I don't know. I have like 3 friends. Except for you guys now. You guys are my friends. And so defense says, like, did those friends stay friends? Did they support you through this? And she said most of them. Not all of them. As you can see, we had a few in court. Not all of them, but most of them stayed friends and supported me after Ryan's death. She confirmed again with Karina, like, has Ryan ever been violent with you physically? And she was like, no, never. Have you ever been violent physically towards Ryan? No, never. She brings up the Snapchat groups that she left. She was like, yeah, I left a Snapchat group because it was a golf tournament Snapchat group and I wasn't going to play that year, so I left the group. Okay. Then they start getting into the night of, and Karina confirms again for the 11th time, sports complex for the game, Pizza Palace to pick up a pizza, home. That's the night of. She said that her youngest two went into the bed with her around 9 or close after, maybe 9:30. The older boy was out on the couch watching TV with Ryan until they fell asleep. Yeah, so that part didn't change, like the series of events leading up to. Defense also then brings up the hunter ed, like that hunter safety course that we had seen the Snapchat, not Snapchats, the screenshots for. And Karina goes on to say, yeah, I did take screenshots. Yeah, I did log into this site because I was taking a hunter safety course. I wanted to be able to either go hunting with my husband and my kids, or when Ryan couldn't go with them, at least be able to go with my children and watch them hunt and know, how to do that safely. And I took those screenshots so that I could cheat on the exam that they give you after, because I wasn't doing so well throughout the course. I mean, okay. Yes. Then defense says, have you ever shot a gun? Have you ever shot a rifle? And Karina was like, yes, I have, but a long time ago. And defense says, but you had told police that you hadn't shot a gun. She's like, yeah. But I was thinking about handguns. When people say, have you ever shot a gun? I think of handgun. Girl, you've been around guns for a long time. But okay, you thought they meant handguns, so you said no. But yes, ultimately testimony reveals Karina has experience with guns, though she says it's very limited and very long ago. Then they start talking about the Snapchats that she was receiving that night. And Karina says, I have no idea. I had no idea that Houston was even near my house that night. I didn't even know. When they're talking about the 3 trips back and forth, she's like, I had no idea. We didn't talk. However, the experts yesterday did testify that at the same time that GPS location data shows Houston driving past her house all 3 times that few nights before, that they were both active on Snapchat. Does it prove anything? No, not definitively, I suppose. Anyway, and then they go on to talk about how, like, yes, these Snapchats were recovered, but there's so many missing. There's so many missing snaps. Just so many. They start talking about her relationship with Houston. How did you meet him? I used to cut his hair. How did you cutting his hair lead into you guys being Snapchat friends? That's what they called them, Snapchat friends, Snapchat buddies, talking on Snapchat. And Karina said, honestly, it did start with a little bit of flirting. He used to talk to me about all his baby mama drama, and I was just so much older and so much more experienced than him that I started to feel bad for him. And so I would entertain his flirting and, that kind of thing. Like, and then I just started to get, like, I took him under my wing. And she started to say baby brother, but then I think she kind of struck that and went with just, like, not brother per se, but just someone older and more experienced. Yeah. She said that Houston just showered her with so much attention and just said all of these amazing, beautiful things to her that she could not get out of her head. And that she was just flattered and she was swept away by all of the, like, nice things that he said to her. And then went on to testify that 99% of their relationship was online. That's it. She said that even when he would come in to cut his hair, they would act like they weren't even having this Snapchat relationship with each other, that it would just be normal conversation that which she would have with all of her other clients, that it was weird. She'd say, we were so shy in person, but then online we would just take on these totally different personas. Like, it was crazy. We would just become completely different people when we were talking to each other on Snapchat. Okay. Then she goes on to say that after February of 2020, One, their relationship one singular time became physical in February of 2021. And that was the only time that happened, and that she never saw him again after that. In fact, she says she stopped cutting his hair because once she realized what she had done by taking the relationship to my hands are all over the place. Once she realized what she had done by taking the relationship to a physical level, she just couldn't face him anymore. And so she even stopped cutting his hair. She was just so sick to her stomach about what she had done that she just couldn't see him in person anymore. She was so scared at that point. She was so scared about ruining her marriage, losing her husband. They mentioned the semi accident, no survivors chat. And she was like, listen, I was joking. I have a really sick sense of humor sometimes, and I have a really sharp tongue. Maybe I was angry at Ryan when I said that. I don't know, but it was jokingly. It wasn't for real. I love my husband. I had no plans to hurt him or even leave him. Houston was jealous, according to Karina, of Karina's own husband. She said that Houston would treat their relationship as though Houston was the husband, and that Ryan was like the side guy that Houston would get jealous of, as though like Karina was cheating on Houston with Ryan. That's how she characterized his attitude towards her relationship with her husband. She said that several times during these Snapchat conversations that Houston would threaten to kill Ryan, and that Karina would just laugh it off or respond with sarcastic responses like, here's to a semi-accident with no survivors, because she didn't take him seriously and she was just playing along. She says that all of the missing Snapchats, the ones that were not retrievable, would have proven this. It would have proven that Houston was the sole person that wanted Ryan dead and that she did not. And if we could only get those Snapchats back, you would see that. When asked by her defense attorney if she wanted her husband dead, Karina says no. Then they go into the shell casings. The shell casings text, and this is Karina's own attorney, and it says, tell me about that text. And Karina says, I mean, I got them, and I just was like, oh, this is another one of his funny jokes about killing my husband. And I was just like, yeah, I got you. Don't worry. Don't worry. On the day you decide to kill my husband, I won't forget those shell casings. I don't know, guys. I try so hard, and I'm continuing to try to stay impartial because I'm really just trying to like analyze before I come to a conclusion, a definitive conclusion. But I guess I've come to that conclusion, but it's because of stuff like this. It doesn't make sense. Like, these things are they're just so revealing to me. They literally tell us everything we need to know. And it's really hard for me to watch someone try to defend something that's just like, oh, yeah, I told him, don't you worry, honey. I thought he was joking. So I was just like, haha, yeah, don't worry, babe. The day you decide to come in and kill my husband, knee slapper, I'll pick up the casings behind you. Like, I don't know, because it's not fucking funny. Sorry again. It's not funny. And I don't believe that she thought it was funny. Who would? 2-minute breather. Okay. Just like, I just need to breathe. Okay. So after that, right? They continue talking about these Snapchats, and they talk about a very specific one, which was at like 3:32. Like 3:32 a.m. where Karina sends a message to Houston Dinker that says, go. And Karina says, yeah, I said go. And then after that, I sent a message that said to, and I sent a message after that said sleep. Go to sleep. That's what she says. That's what she says happened. And that those messages were just not retrieved. They were unretrievable. We couldn't get that. We couldn't get that access. They just weren't there. We are going to touch on that in a few minutes. The rest of Katrina, who's that? The rest of Karina's testimony was pretty much just regurgitated from everything else that we had seen. She heard a crashing noise. She was dead asleep. She heard a crashing noise. She woke up. By the way, two very low, which multiple experts testified over the last 2 days, saying that if there were two 22 caliber rifle, why can't I speak? If there were two 22 caliber rifle gunshots going off in that small house, boy, you'd have heard it. Heard this, what she describes as a crashing noise, not multiple crashing noises, though there. See, I keep coming back to this. I know you guys have seen my little, I got issues because these were two very loud gunshots that she correlates with a crashing noise. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know anything about guns. No one's ever shot a gun in my house. No one's ever shot a gun in my general vicinity. Not that I can remember anyway. So maybe I have literally no clue what I'm talking about, and I'm 100% willing to concede on that fact. However, it's just so hard to believe that this woman is claiming to be asleep and hearing a crashing noise, not two crashing noise. Even if she's relating a gunshot to a crashing noise, it would have been two of them, not one, two. Why does this fact bother me so much? I can't get past it. I don't know. It's my brain, and I can't control it. It does its own thing. I was gonna say it has a mind of its own, but it's a brain's, obviously. Anyway, okay, moving on. Back to why you're here, not my weird rantings. I just really have to call out the fact that for you to get on the stand and to continue with the story that you were asleep and you heard this noise and you woke up, you're lying, Karina. You're actually lying. I don't even like calling people out like this, but you're lying. Because we have Snapchat messages that are time-stamped. You were not asleep. Even if what you're on this stand trying to tell us that we're missing all these messages and that the message that we do have are taken out of context because the rest of them would totally explain everything, you're still not asleep. Because you're Snapchatting. And so this crazy random crashing noise that you heard that woke you up out of your sleep is not true. This isn't true. I'm banging on my desk. I just tell the truth. But she sticks to this on the stand, which is crazy to me because we have the Snapchats. You were not asleep. I'm going to tell you right now, like, this is what's bothering me so bad is that I think there was a part of me, just because I know I've gotten so familiar with so many people in this community. I don't know what happened. When I posted that little 5-minute short about me possibly covering this case, and it was literally that. It was literally this 5-minute thing was like, hey guys, there's this little thing that I heard about a few years ago, and now it's come back up because these people are going to trial. Like, what do you think? Like, should I cover it? And the response from you guys was just absolutely incredible. And I was like, well, I have to. Now I wanted to anyway, I probably was going to anyway, but you guys gave me that, like, right? And so, but then it's people from the community itself just expressing all of this anguish and confusion and all of this stuff, and some people who are actually close with Karina and that are just like, there's no way, but then what I'm seeing is not it's not matching that energy. I'm just like, so a part of me, when I saw that Karina got on the stand, there was a very tiny part of me that was like, let me hear what she has to say, because maybe there's something I'm missing. And maybe this girl is telling the truth. Something, I don't know why I do that. I do that with everybody. And I know that the people that are in this little community that I'm trying to build I know that many of you probably have that same heart, right? Trying to find the best in everybody, trying to make sense of shit that just doesn't make sense. And so when she got on the stand, I really was just like, okay, Karina, this is your chance, girl. Prove prove me wrong, please, right? So that the people who love you and who support you won't feel so shitty right now. And she didn't do that. In my opinion, I still love all of you who may think differently, but in my opinion, she didn't do that. She continued to lie. She wasn't asleep. We know that because we've seen the evidence. So to get on the stand and continue with that narrative irritates me. I don't know why, but here we are. Moving on. Defense picks up a freaking model of this to scale. No, Karina says, no, I wish my bathroom was that big, but no, it's not. And also they mislabeled this hallway, which is actually my sewing room. And then they moved on from that. Once again, why? Am I missing something? Somebody explain the defense's obsession with this model not being to scale. I'm missing something. It's fine. I do that often. We talk about the door. Karina says, I don't know. The door is usually locked. I'm fairly confident that it was locked. Can I say for sure? No. But usually the door is locked. So how would this person get in the house if they weren't let in? That's my question. Why did you call Aaron first, Karina? Her attorney asks. And Karina says, I called Aaron first because he's a first responder. That's what he does. And if I was going to trust anybody, it would be Aaron. But Aaron testified that when you called, you didn't say anything about Ryan needing aid. And when Aaron arrived to the scene, you didn't ask anybody for aid. That bugs me. It bugs me. Karina went on to say that you're actually joking. That was a fly. Karina went on to say that she admits, she concedes, she lied to authorities. She lied to authorities because she was terrified of Houston Danker. She said that 3 months after Ryan was killed in September of 2021, the threats from Houston started. He would send her jealous energy Snapchat messages, that he would send her Snapchat messages saying that he saw her, what she was wearing, and where she was, like he was stalking her. He was watching her and kept reminding her in these messages that he knew very dangerous people and that he would take out anyone else that he needed to. However, fun fact, Karina cut Houston's hair in September of that month. Mind you, she had previously testified that she hadn't seen him since February because she didn't like that their relationship had become physical, and that scared her because she didn't want to lose her husband or ruin her marriage. But she cut his hair in September after Ryan's death. And that haircut appointment took place prior to the threatening Snapchat messages. But she did say that when he was there getting his haircut, he did make a threat to her at that time. And at that point, she became scared for her life, and that she never saw him again after that, which I believe. I think I believe that after September, because I feel like, well, you know what? I'm not going to go. Maybe you guys want that. I don't know. Maybe you're here. You're probably not here for like my thoughts, but maybe it's true that she didn't see him after September. Yeah, I can believe that. She went on to say, flipping my pages. Y'all, I have filled up an entire legal pad with this trial. It's crazy. It's crazy. Karina went on to say that this was just an online fantasy. It was just an online fantasy. It was something that she was living through Houston Danker. This young man showering her with all this attention and affection and all of these things. And it was a fantasy. And that she knew it was a fantasy, and that she had, it was not real. Even in her own mind, it wasn't real. And she was very devoted to Ryan. She would never leave Ryan, and she would never hurt Ryan. It was just a thing, like a play thing, like a fantasy world, right? That was just lived through the interwebs, never actually in person, except for that one time, but never after that, she says. Her attorney says, did you participate in any way or orchestrate the death of your husband, Ryan? And she said, no, shaking, weeping, sobbing. And then they showed, the very last thing that defense showed was a photo of Karina that was taken that morning after the scene was cleared of Karina. She was cleaned off, looked cleaned off. There was nothing on her, especially considering we know her position. But she was cleaned off. She had kind of her hands out, and she looked totally distraught. And the defense said, "Did you clean yourself up?" Now, I had never heard that being raised as a question, but maybe I missed something. But she said, "Did you clean yourself up after, after the police had left?" And she said, "No." My sister-in-law was there. She got a towel and she wiped my face because I was covered in blood, and she just kind of cleaned me up. But I did not personally go and like clean myself off of I did not like go wash evidence off. And defense said no further questions. So guess whose turn it is, guys? The state. It's time for the state to cross-examine Karina Cooper. State gets on and Mr. Israel Kodiaga, who I've just come to really adore. I really just do. Got on and said, "So your husband was killed." Karina's like, "Yeah, yes, he was." And Mr. Kodiaga says, "In the place where he's supposed to feel the safest, right? In his own home, in your own home, the home that you shared with your children." "Yes." "And you loved him, right?" And she says, "Yes, I did love him. I do love him." Mr. Kodiaga at that point decides that this would be a great time to pull up these Snapchat messages. And guess what he makes her do? He makes her read them. He makes her read them out loud right there for the world to see. And that's shade. I'm not gonna lie. That's you're gonna make this girl read out these Snapchat messages anyway. So he makes her read through all of the Snapchat messages where she called Ryan the sperm donor, and all of the Snapchat messages where she told Houston that he was those kids' daddy. He didn't need her permission to do things with her kids. And, he was their daddy. Of course he could. And Karina rebutted with, "Well, that was a fantasy." He brought up the text message of her saying, "Here's hoping for a semi-accident with no survivors." He made her read all of these things out loud. It's just, okay. I'm going to reel it in because it's hard to defend. It's hard to defend. She was saying that after her husband's death is when she became scared of Houston, not before. Not when she was sending all of these texts. She wasn't scared of him then, but it was after Ryan was killed that she became scared of Houston. That's why she seemed all lovey-dovey with him at that time. And then the state brings up the text where she says, "I don't want to wait another summer." And then says, "And isn't it true that at the beginning of that summer is when all of this occurred?" Karina says, "Yeah." The state says, "You mentioned in one of your Snapchats that what you said in that Snapchat was, 'I don't need another child. I need a partner, not another child.' Ma'am, you had a man who, by your own testimony, worked so hard and so many long hours and so just you had that man, and then you said you wanted a partner and not a child to a 22-year-old essentially child. I have trouble here." I mean, look, I'm not in this girl's mind. I don't live her life. I don't know. No, we ain't about to do this. Me and these, I love summer. I'm like a sun goddess. I worship the sun. But let me tell you something. Me and these flies, not me drinking coffee at 8:55 p.m. and then wondering why I'm so tired the next day because I can't go to sleep till 2 a.m. Anyway, I have to get this posted. I need you guys to talk to me. I need you guys to see this and I need you to talk to me. Yes. So you're telling your 22-year-old partner that you need a man, honey, not a partner. You need a man. Meanwhile, you have a husband who farms and drives semis and literally provides absolutely everything and anything you could possibly need or want. But you're telling a child that you need a man, not a child. Okay. While the state is saying this to her, Karina court TV is obviously in her face and she's starting to look a little less sad. How she was looking during her direct from her own attorney. She's looking a little less sad and a little slightly more perturbed, Mr. Kodiaga from the state brings up the life insurance. Of course he did. And she says, well, we both had life insurance. He said, I didn't ask you that. I asked you about Ryan's life insurance and how much it was worth. And are you the sole beneficiary of that life insurance? And she said, yes. He said, is it true that many times throughout your relationship, in front of even your own friends, you declared on a regular basis how much you hated him? And she said, I would say that, like when I was drinking and I was mad. And then he brings up the I could shoot you in the face comment, in which she adamantly denies. So keep in mind, we had not just one, but two witnesses come onto the stand and testify to the fact that they heard Karina say that night. And not only that she said it, but that it felt venomous. It felt different, right? From just that normal, like, oh my God, you get on my nerves, I could just kill you. It wasn't that, right? It was like this, they felt uncomfortable with the comment that she made when she said she could just shoot him in the face. And when Mr. Kodiaga from the state says, what about this? And she's like, I never said that. I just completely flat out, outright denies, I never said that. That's not even true. So these two people that are on the stand today are just total liars. Okay, then we get into, again, I knew Karina's getting a little bit sassy, a little snarky at this point. You can see her demeanor changing. Maybe this the Karen that everyone was talking about. She never outright, of course, is disrespectful in any way, but you can see that, like, that sass coming out of her during this line of questioning. Mr. Kodiaga goes on to ask about the sleeping arrangements, how it was strange that, like, the night of, her son decided to sleep upstairs and all of that stuff. He goes into the Snapchats. Again, he pulls up the visual aid, right, with all of the Snapchats. And it was weird because the night of Ryan's murder, Houston Dinker sent a message and said something along the lines of, like, well, you saw me in my underwear this morning. And Mr. Kodiaga, I think, was like, well, isn't that strange? Because you said you haven't seen him since September. And she was like, well, it wasn't it was a picture. He sent me a picture of him in his underwear on Snapchat. So I hadn't actually seen him, which valid. Sure, that's entirely possible. So he continues to have her read through all of these Snapchat messages, right? Read them out loud, which is, God, I started sweating a little bit on my neck. I was like, imagine, embarrassing. Like, that's hard to read. Some of these were hard to read intrinsically, much less out loud. So we are continuing on with the state's examination of Karina's messages to Houston, and she says, read this out loud. And she did. He said, you referred to yourself as his wife and to be prepared for all of these explicit things to happen once she was his wife. And, they kind of went on back and forth about that a little bit. And then he sends the text message that says, after I leave your house, make sure you send me a text message in a little bit after I leave your house. And then when I get back to my house, I'll respond to it. Deal? And she said, deal. After I leave your house. This is at 3:30 in the morning. And he's saying, when I leave there, send me a text. And then I'll turn my phone back on and respond to it. Deal? And she said, deal. And then came that infamous text that the state started its case with. Remember those casings. Fucking remember the casings. And she said, absolutely 100% I will. There was no ignorance on her part. When he sent that message, she knew what he was talking about. Absolutely 100% I will. And then he sent the text or the snap. I say text. It's all kind of the same thing to me, but he sent the snap that said, all right, babe, turning the phone off. I have to go get this shit done. And she said, go. She didn't say go to sleep. She said, go. 1 hour later, 1 hour after that text was sent, after that Snapchat message was sent, her husband, Ryan Cooper, was dead. I don't know. And then the state goes on to contend with her about the fact that throughout the entire investigation, for someone who was so terrified of this person, Houston Danker, like, you never said anything to them. Never said anything to the deputies. You never said anything to the DCI agent who interviewed you about you being scared of this person and how you think that this person may have did it. And she's like, no, I didn't. I was scared of him. And he said, when Aaron came over, he didn't even have time to put his shirt on. He came over with his gun ready to protect you and your family. And you never once said that you were scared of this person. She said, nope. Sure didn't, because I was scared of this person. You were interviewed that same morning, the same morning that Ryan was taken. And when he even mentioned Houston's name, your response was Danker? Literally. That's literally what you said. That's exactly what you said. You passionately denied any and everything related to Houston Danker, as though you it was like, what? And in fact, you called him a kid. You said it was ridiculous, and you called this line of questioning dumb, but you were terrified of him. After the autopsy was performed that day, you were interviewed again the next day. And this was interesting to me. Psychologically, I am no psychologist. I am not versed in anything educationally related to, it was just something I found interesting. When Mr. Kodiaga said, so the agent showed up to interview. So the agent showed up to talk with you the next day, and, he was really just trying to find out it's a fly. My God. Okay, let me stop fighting with flies on my channel. That's not why we're here. So when the DCI agent showed up to talk with Karina the day after the incident, right? This is after the autopsy had been performed, all of this stuff. This is the same day that we went back, we were talking about when she shooed him off his property, she kicked him off his property. She was like, I'm getting private and get investigator, all this stuff, right? So he was there that day. And so Mr. Kodiaga was questioning her about this day. And he was like, well, obviously, DCI agent, I can't remember his name now, showed up to, he was there to find out what happened to Ryan. And Karina, literally dead ass in court, looks at him and was like, I don't know what he wanted to find out. And Mr. Kodiaga was like, don't you? It was his job to find out what happened with your husband. That's why we're all here. And I think she put herself in check pretty quickly, because she was like, no, I didn't mean that. I meant, I'm just saying he never explicitly said why he was there, but obviously it's his job, so obviously that's why he was there. I think she realized, girl, you're in front of a jury. They're watching you. And I feel like she kind of really quickly put herself in check and was like, rein it in, sassy pants. But it was definitely starting to sound a little bit petty in her response. She was like, well, I don't know why he was there. Yes, you do. Your husband was just killed the night before. Of course you know why he's there. He's trying to find out what happened. He's trying to get to the bottom of this, right? For you and for your family, your children, your community, your friends, your loved ones. He's trying to figure this out. What do you mean? I don't know why he was there. It was the next day. You know why he was there. It was literally just maybe that running Karen joke. It was yeah, maybe it wasn't so much of a joke. It was coming out literally during interrogation. Not interrogation, because it was kind of just a casual interview, but we were seeing it. And anyway, with that aside, then Mr. Kodiaga goes into just kind of briefly asking her, so when you kicked him off of your property, your last statement to him was well, you know what? Maybe it's time I hire a PI. She was like, yeah. to solve what happened to Ryan. He was like, well, you just said that you were terrified of Houston Dinger, who you knew did this. So like, if you knew who did this, why would you express the need to hire a PI to get to the bottom of it? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. And then that final statement where she was like, don't you think if I knew who did this, I'd be in jail already because I'd kill the motherfucker? And Mr. Kodiaga was like, did you say that? And she was like, yes, that's exactly what I said. Anyway, and then that was it. So then on redirect, right? So then Karina's attorney got kind of back up and was like, isn't it true that the messages that you read were only a portion of the messages? And Karina was like, yeah. And then they said something about, well, also, didn't you get text messages from Houston while you were at your kid's game that night? And she said, yeah. And her attorney was like, weren't they angry messages? And Karina went on to kind of talk about how Houston had sent her messages while she was at the kids' game that night with Ryan. They had rode there together. They rode home together. And that Houston was sending messages, those jealous messages, the fact that she was there with Ryan instead of him, that kind of thing. And then her defense attorney said, why didn't you say something to police? And Karina went on to say, I was scared of Houston. I was scared of the police. I was scared of the fact that I had been lying so long that, I was also scared of the fact that I knew I was being set up for this. And, I thought that if I kept my mouth shut, Houston would leave me alone. And then Recross got back up and was like, well, you're talking about these angry text messages that you were getting from Houston, which could not be recovered, by the way. But also, didn't you send him a heart face or kissy emoji, whatever, Snapchat at 3:30 in the morning? She was like, yes. And they were like, that's all we got. And then defense got up and said, defense rests its case. Yeah. And then we see Karina crying more, kind of back at her seat. And she was crying, probably a super stressful situation, I imagine. I don't want to do it. Outside of jury presence, the judge talked about at that point jury instructions, how they would move forward with all of that. And then we kind of came back from a little break and we had a rebuttal. A rebuttal, for anyone who doesn't know, is when the opposite side gets up and testifies to something, right? A witness that has been previously on the stand from the other side, right? So in this case, Karina was the defense's witness. She got up and was talking about no, I did blah, blah, blah. Well, a witness that was on the prosecution's side came back to rebut some information that Karina tried to pass off as fact, which wasn't. And that person was Detective Tiffany Lord. This person was the person who was in charge of all of the forensic cell phone data recovery, the Snapchat messages, all of that. You guys remember her? I do. She was the one who spilled all of the tea, and she got back on the stand. And Mr. Kodiaga said, hey, Detective Lord, so Karina says that after she sent the message that said go, that she also sent messages that said to, and then another message that said sleep, go, to, sleep. 3 separate messages. And Detective Tiffany Lord said, false. And Mr. Kodiaga was like, well, what do you mean false? Maybe is it possible that they just weren't retrieved? She said, no. Not retrievable and not there. We can see code data that says a message was sent. There were no messages sent after go. It's not that the message was sent and not retrievable. It's just that the messages were not sent. Go was sent. Nothing after go until 421, there was actually an unretrievable message sent. They were able to see that it was sent at that time, but the message itself was not retrievable. The timestamp was there. The data is there when an outgoing message was sent. That message was sent from Karina to Houston at 421, unretrievable message, but his response to her was retrievable. That was the one that said, yep, just woke up. That's the one that he told her to send, in my opinion. Remember, he sent that earlier one that said, don't forget, when I leave, So my phone's going down, but when I leave your place, send me a message so I can respond to it when I get back to where I am. Because I'm shutting my phone down so that there's no location data. But if you send me a message that I can respond to, then my location data will pick up, like, once I respond to it at the time that you send it. And so, my loves, after that, there were no further questions after that rebuttal, because obviously, what do you say after that? So defense went on and was like, okay, I guess that's it. And that is it. We are done. We're done with both sides. Both sides have rested tomorrow morning. However, right? So outside of jury presence, I guess there was some discussion, and tomorrow morning they're saying that Karina wants to get back on the stand. So just how we just had a rebuttal from Detective Tiffany Lord, now Karina has a rebuttal from something that maybe someone said, possibly Detective Tiffany Lord in her rebuttal. So we are going to hear from Karina again in the morning, and then after that, closing arguments, unless after Karina gives her rebuttal, there's another rebuttal from the state that can go on and on for a little bit, but we'll see. But anyway, after all of the rebuttals, closing arguments. And my friends, I have a feeling that by this time tomorrow, well, probably way before this time tomorrow, I'm so sorry this video has gone out so late, by the way. Such a long day, and but I'm glad you're here. But by this time tomorrow, I feel like we will be on verdict watch. What do you guys think? Where's your head? What are you thinking right now? Like, what are you saying to yourselves? What do you believe? What do you What's going on? Talk to me. I gotta know. Like, where's your head at right now? Because that's where it ended. We're done. We're done for the day. We're done with evidence presentation, closing arguments tomorrow. Like I said, that's it. That's this case in a nutshell. And I gotta be honest, as far as a jury is concerned, I don't know. Tell me what you think. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to try to eat a little bit, and I'm going to maybe lay down, catch a few Z's, wake up in the morning and do this all over again. And honestly, I can't wait. I can't wait to talk to you. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. I can't wait to give more updates. I can't wait till this weekend. I'm going to go into a deep dive, a whole new case. It's not a new case, but it is an upcoming trial. I can't wait to go into that. I'm just super, I just have this little, I have this new vigor for continuing. Thanks to you guys, honestly. No other reason. And yes, so tell me what you think. I can't wait to hear it. And we will talk really soon. But until we do, please, 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 please stay safe. Keep asking questions and keep unraveling. Love you.